Welcome, ladies and gentlemen, boys and girls, to another edition of Real Talk, put on by Let's Talk America Radio. Of course, I'm Shana Thornton, on air talent and executive producer. And tonight's edition of the program will impress, educate, and motivate you. And we are talking about the big word money. We're talking about financial awareness and financial literacy for our youth, our children, our godkids, our nieces and nephews, our students. It's such an important conversation that has to take place before 25 years old. And I am no expert at it, but of course, here on Real Talk, produced by Let's Talk America Radio, we seek the best and the brightest guests, those advocates out there. And tonight, so excited. It's her debut on Let's Talk America's program. We're talking about the one and only LaWanna Ross Cow. So excited to have her on. She is with the one and only Operation Hope, and her title is America's Financial Wellbeing Coach for Small Business. I love it. She is committed to educating all individuals, but with a focus on Black and Brown individuals in terms of financial literacy and getting the education out there. LaWanna, thank you for joining our program tonight.
Thank you so much for having me, Shana. I'm absolutely thrilled about the opportunity to speak today.
Oh, I am. And you and I were talking before. I love your passion. I love your commitment. It's such a worthy cause. It's sort of the elephant in the room, though. We talked about that as well before, that so many people don't want to discuss because money can be sort of the taboo, the embarrassment. So many mistakes were made. But I know you are committed, along with, of course, your great organization that you are with, to really educate and answer those tough questions and get those important topics and that knowledge to everyone in particular. And tonight we're going to discuss the youth. But before we kick it off, I've seen your resume. It's amazing. Okay. Your advocacy and what you've done to get here. But we love to discuss the personal side for the first 2 minutes of the interview, LaWanna, here on Real Talk. What motivates you each and every day to get up early and continue to educate minority groups and others about financial literacy and trying to be as healthy as possible when it comes to finances? Because we do a lot of segments here on this program about physical health, mental health, emotional health, but financial health matters as well, right? It does set you up for the long run. So what's behind your commitment for it?
Oh, that's such a great question. You know, the motivation behind what I do. I like to tell people that I was raised in two different households, right? I lived a double life for a little while. When I was in my younger years, I lived with my grandparents while they were, young, old enough and strong enough to take care of me. And I really learned a lot from them. You work hard, you save money. And then when they fell ill, I went to to transition to live with my mother, who, was a single income household. There were 5 siblings. So we really struggled, right? And so knowing that, being able to live on both sides of the spectrum, I've always had that passion to do better, to learn more, to make sure that our family would thrive, right? And like you said, there was so much, there's taboo around finances. There's that fear of having those conversations and being transparent in our households, that we really didn't talk about money when I was with my mother. And we kind of lived day to day, and, I'm not ashamed to say sometimes things didn't get paid. And I always thought that there has to be a better way, right? We have to live better. And, through my mother really trying hard to raise these 5 children, she picked up some things along the way financially. And I was able to explore that, hey, help is out there. So throughout my career, I just was an advocate 100% of doing better, understanding money, making sure that I put a little money aside for a rainy day. And that helped power me through to owning my own investment and financial firm. I was able to coach people who had money and make them richer. And then I thought about it like, this is where my passion is. I want to help people like me who grew up in households and we didn't have very much money, and teach them the foundations that they need to be successful. And then I found Operation Hope in 2018. They brought me on, and I can't say that I regret transitioning out of that agency and doing what I do. I have the knowledge to empower people in Black and brown communities and alike, communities alike, those disenfranchised and those underbanked and underserved communities, and help these people just get the access to the information that they need. So that's a little bit about my journey.
I love it. And anyone watching us, right, and listening to your voice and seeing you can see the passion and the enthusiasm, and that's so important because it's authentic. When you were talking about educating groups of individuals, and I love it. I want to go right in, bounce right in on what you brought up. You said so many Americans, and we know this is all over the world, but in the United States here as well, of course. I want to talk about why the struggle, so if we can. And there are many stats out there. They say a majority of Americans are literally one paycheck away themselves from displacement or being put out or struggling. The savings is not where it needs to be. And in my mind, I'm no financial expert like you, right? But I'm thinking there are lots of reasons why that can be. I think for a lot of individuals, especially those in minority communities, it's playing catch up, right? In terms of generational things that may have happened that obviously they had no control over, right? Also, perhaps jobs or professions that may not be paying the same as other professions that other individuals may have. Because I think, and you know this, having your own investment firm at one point, I've interviewed several financial advisors, and it's funny, sometimes they'll say they want to work magic, but at the end of the day, sometimes the people don't have the money or the means or the income. It is a different conversation. And I want this conversation, LaWanna, tonight to be authentic and real, because we can talk, pie in the sky. We can obviously talk about doing this and that, but we know there are people that just don't make the money. Right. You know that. And they have bills, and perhaps they're a single mother or a single father or a grandparent doing the very best, but the very best is not adding up. So I want you to open up right now in this conversation. My first question to you is, how do we change it? And I know that's a huge question for LaWanna Roscoe to answer tonight, but what's the first step that can get us there?
Absolutely. And it's such a great question. Like you said, it's so broad. There's so many different answers out there. But the truth of the matter is we just need the transparency, right? Of owning up to, we know that there is an economic disadvantage for minority communities. We understand that there are problems that happen that we may not have control over, but how do we start to solve it? I don't have the answer of how we solve it, but how we start to have those solutions to that problem is just being transparent and having those conversations, right? Sharing what we know as a community. If we had 100% economic equality, there would be no need for Operation Hope or organizations like us to bring that educational piece to the forefront, to talk about these conversations. And that's where we thrive. We seek out those individuals that may not make much money, that may be living the paycheck to paycheck. And we really want to put a lens on what their financial situation is, educate them on what's going on, where are you spending your money, which, the second thing to that is, making people aware that there's a problem. The second step is to make sure that we are helping educate those communities that there's resources out there to help. And once they do receive those resources to help, really be truthful with our community. Hey, let's work on some things that are going on here. Let's open your eyes to see where those gaps are, if it's not making enough money, or figuring out exactly where your money is going. And then the third part of that is a budget. And people hate the B word, right?
They
budget,
do. They do.
We feel like it's restricting. But I do believe if we have transparency and understand how much money we have to work with and truly what our expenses are, we can navigate to that next step, right? And we can understand what even is that next step. Do I need to make more money, or is the money that I'm making, am I spending too much of it, right? So just helping them identify really what's going on in their situation, but acknowledging that there really is a problem with the economic disparity.
That is so true. And thank you for being so transparent and real about it, because you're saying it's a mix. And obviously there are dynamics that exist that sometimes people have very little influence over, but you're saying something as a budget, a household budget, a personal budget. Those are things that we can do. But people do hate that word, you know that,
Yes.
LaWanna, because they're
Yes.
like, oh, so you mean I can't get, I mean, and it can vary from person to person, but I can't get the Starbucks. I can't. So
Yes.
I mean, uh,
Absolutely.
yeah, I mean, it's a tough call because people do want certainly to have that balance there, right? I
Right.
want to dive into the youth part of it because you were saying transparency, and when you said that, and tonight, of course, we're focusing on financial awareness and literacy for all people, but in particular for educating our youth. And of course, with the one and only Operation Hope, we have an amazing team member with us. We have the one and only LaWanna Ross Cows is with us tonight talking about that. I want to dive into it, but when we talk about being transparent, our little eyes are watching, or our big eyes, if they happen to be 15 or 16. How, and you know this yourself, how truthful should a parent be about the finances in a household? And I know initially someone may say, well, of course, be all truthful. And I am very big about being truthful with children, child appropriate conversations and the jargon that we're using. But I think so many parents, LaWanna, so many mothers and so many fathers and aunts or uncles, whoever's helped raising this child with the village keepers, so many tend to say, as much as I want to be open with them so maybe they can understand that money doesn't grow on trees and you just can't ask for things,
Yes.
it's coming out of an account or it's being put on a credit card that has to be paid back at some point. You also have the little notion in your head as that parent or guardian that you don't want them to worry,
Yes.
because we know, right, that all children really want in the end, if they admit it or not, is stability. And
Yes.
to worry about if the rent's going to be paid, if the water is going to stay on, things that there are millions of Americans or people around the world have to worry about. How do you balance that line, LaWanna, where you want to be transparent, you want to change some things that may have happened previous in families that we could have some control over, keeping in mind that everything with financial literacy, you or awareness or some financial things, mishaps, you don't have control over. But for some we do. But you emotionally, you want to protect that child. How do you do it?
You know, again, another great question. I'm a wife, I'm a mom of 4 beautiful girls. I believe that, like you said, transparency is key. Have these conversations with your children. I know we want to shelter them, we want to protect them, but we're not doing them any good by not telling them what to expect when they go into the real world, right? Because a lot of our children are almost shell shocked when they turn 18 and they have to go into the real world and they have to understand what are taxes and how do I pay them and how much. I didn't know that I had to buy toilet paper. I didn't know that I needed to pay for these things. And what is electricity? What is gas? What is water? I have to pay for these things. And it's one of those things, like I'll go back to me living a double life where my grandparents were very honest with me about, you have to work and these are the things that you have to pay for. And then going into the household with my mother and like, Mom, I think I was maybe 9 years old. I was like, Mom, we need a budget, and so it's one of those things where I truly feel that we're not going to hurt our children by having those age appropriate conversations about money. We can only help them. And not doing so can potentially financially harm them and set them back to the point of where when they do get into the real world and they're on their own, they may make a lot of financial mistakes that we were trying to protect them from. I include my girls in our day-to-day decision-making when it comes to finances. When we sit down and I write my budget, I write it out. They get paid for the work that they do. They have to contribute to the household. You don't contribute to the household, you don't get paid. And even when I do pay them their own allowances, we have those conversations like, do you really want to purchase this Robux card for $10? Or are you going to want something later on, right? There might be a school fair or something, and you may want to buy Kona ice. so that way they can really understand, like, hey, I do need to manage my money a little bit better. But they're getting the sense of working, showing entrepreneurship and leadership by, mom, let me help you with baby sister, right? And then I can earn $5, and they're taking that initiative to understand I need to earn money, but I also know I need to know to save it and where do I want to spend it. So I think that it can only help your children and, foster good leadership skills, good responsibility skills, and great decision making when they become adults.
Mhm. I love it. And I will say, I'm sure parents all over cringe when you said Robux, because we're very familiar with that.
Yes.
Like, yes, little negotiators already. Can I have Robux? I love it. It's such a great conversation about financial literacy and awareness for our youth. And so you're saying really incorporate them as
Yes.
much as possible into the structure of our society, because you have a great point. I mean, I think, you and I probably grew up with chores or doing things, or you working towards something. And I'm going to make this statement, and I hope people don't get upset about it. But seemingly in our culture today in America, I don't know if chores are as common as they were 25 years ago. It appears when children want something as parents, sometimes if we're able to do it, we just automatically do it without putting in the parameters of working towards something. And I have heard some parents say, well, I don't want my kids working as teenagers, which millions of ones over 30 years old did years ago. They don't want it now because I want them, just to be free and they have their whole life to work. I know you already talked about chores in your household. I'm not sure if your girls are old enough to work, but and we don't want this necessarily turn into a parenting this and that, which we do. But when we are talking about financial awareness and literacy and changing things, we do have to talk about some parameters that do touch on parenting. And I know you're not here to chastise somebody if they're saying they don't want their child to work, but are there probably, from your opinion as a parent and as a financial awareness expert, benefits to a child that's able to work outside of the home or in the home? There's all sort of online business opportunities now. Do you think that teaches important lessons?
Yes, absolutely. I mean, not only is Operation Hope a organization that is a nonprofit organization that is for purpose and helping people bridge the gap from economic disparity to inclusion, we also help foster entrepreneurship skills, whether that's for adults or youth. So we firmly believe in helping these young adults understand that they're going to be a part of society when they turn 18. Now you may be responsible for a whole lot of responsibility that you had no idea that was out there. So we definitely believe in teaching them entrepreneurial skills. And it's not to say your way is wrong or your way is right. It's just finding some solutions to this big problem of preparing our children for what to expect, right? No matter what you want your children to be doing, whether you want them working, whether you want them to have their own business, whether you want them to go to college, no matter what path you want for your children, you're giving them those tools and resources that they need to be an active and productive member of society and to live a great life, right? That's all we want for our children. So even if it's maybe helping them foster some entrepreneurship skills, like helping, collecting some of their old clothes or their old toys and taking them to sell it for cash and putting that in their savings account, all their own unwanted stuff, helping foster some entrepreneurship skills. Or if it's even finding creative ways to make money, like finding it in the couch, or keeping spare change, just helping the conversations about, what money is and how money can help. That it's important that, the big M word, the world revolves around money. If you want something, you have to exchange something for it. And most likely it's currency. So no matter what your parenting style is, there's so many different ways that you can help your children understand you need to earn money, no matter what way you're going to do it, but how to be smart about going about spending that money.
I love it. LaWanna, great information. Before we close out, I have to ask this. I know you mentioned that sometimes you ask your girls to choose, but I think another shift in parenting is being able to say no to our children when they are asking for financial things. And I would imagine, I'm a parent as well, it's so important to set them up to understand expectations in life. There's not always going to be yes. And sometimes even when it comes to lessons of finance, right? So for parents for those softies out there, for them to really toughen up and sometimes say no,
Yeah.
right?
Yes, yes. I mean, I think we get so scared that we don't want to hurt our children's feelings and we just want to give them everything. We have this guilt. I don't know where this guilt comes from of we don't want our children to go without, but telling our children no is not a bad thing. It's teaching them boundaries. It's giving, and helping them understand that the world is not going to always say yes to you. And it is okay if mommy says no, just like I know, and I might get some bad, negative feedback from them, but just like it's okay for you to tell me no. And, mommy, I just don't want to do it right now. And, I just respect that. Okay, honey, you don't want to do it right now. Let's find a time for you to do it. Right. And it's just making sure that we respect our little people, just like we want them to respect us, but setting some great boundaries for them so that they understand that, this is the way of the world.
I've got to ask this. I had a conversation earlier with someone and they said cash was king, right? It really runs so much. And you talked about that exchange factor that we have that's all over the world, right?
Yeah.
Regardless of the currency. I want to talk about credit though, and credit versus cash. And I think certainly 50 years ago, the United States was much more of a cash driven society as we know now. So much is based off of credit and different apps that you have based off of things that you have that's available somewhere else or you may have access to. That is such a challenging conversation, I think, for children, because I think 25 years ago, when I was coming up, perhaps it was a different story because it was easier to say, this is cash, this is what you have, this is what you don't have. But now, I've seen it in stores myself where I've seen 10-year-olds tell their father, just take the credit card out. That's all. Don't worry about it.
Sounds like my 10-year-old.
Right. Okay. And probably at 1 year old as well, at all ages. But talk to us about that dynamic briefly of making them understand or encouraging them to understand, yes, it's a plastic card and they're not seeing anything tangible other than the card. So in their minds, just keep charging. And we all know, LaWanna, there are many adults that also have that concern and issue, if you will, or that weakness. And that gets a lot of people and a lot of credit issues and problems. How do you explain that to children?
That's a phenomenal question, right? It's all about, again, having that conversation and building that relationship with our children and teaching them. They may not be able to grasp the entire concept. And even though we know roughly, and, just giving out a rough number here, 60% of the world's economy is still using cash. Credit is still very vitally important. Right now, we're actually moving into a fintech age, financial technology, and credit is always going to be a factor when we want to do things like purchase a home or purchase a car. When we start to need to show our credibility to lenders that can help us, maybe if we don't have the money right now, they extend us a line of credit, but what is that based off of? Our financial responsibility. Right? Being able to show that we're financially responsible. And that's where credit comes in. So even though they don't understand what the credit score needs to be to obtain those things, they do need to understand that it is something that is going to be needed when they need to utilize it. And it's important for all of us to understand not to overutilize credit, right? It's one of the biggest conversations that I have with my clients. Just because we have the credit does not mean we need to spend it, right? Like we talked about, having a household budget is so important, but understanding how much credit we need so we're not overextending ourselves and having a plan to use that credit. If that plan is to purchase a home, make sure that we have the proper action steps in place to obtain home ownership and not to just, max out our cars. And, I know that we live in a society where, we want to have the best of the best, but that's not the goal of credit. The goal of credit is to help us get to the things that we need to have a sustainable life, but not to overextend. So also just have those conversations with your children. There's ways that we can talk about those things. You can even add your children to your line of credit, at an appropriate age, whether it's 16 to 18, and you can help them start establishing credit. And then when they're old enough to have those conversations of understanding what encompasses a credit score, what's a good credit score, they're already steps ahead. And they don't have to work so hard to obtain that. They already have it because you set that foundation for them.
I love it. It's all about education, changing the conversation as much as possible, shifting things, if you will. We talk about generational lessons, and finances has to be a part of that. We have to, as LaWanna Roskow's pointed out, be as transparent as possible. And I mentioned this at the top of the segment, LaWanna, have a child appropriate conversation. Obviously, a 7-year-old may not necessarily get what a 15-year-old is going to understand, but I think, like so many other topics out there, be it drugs or whatever, it's never too early to start that conversation in a way that child can receive it. And you know this, I mean, to be so many different experts in so many different fields, it can't be a one-time conversation, right? We can't say, by the way, don't overspend, and we never have that conversation again. We have to keep building, and that conversation will evolve the older they get and the more options that are presented to them. Because, hey, when you're 20 years old, there may be certain things presented to you financially, but when you're 40 and you're in a different status in life or different options in life, there can be different things. So we have to keep that education going in that conversation. Before you go, I've got to ask this, the F word of future. So many children may want to go to college, some may go in the military, some may go to a trade school, some sort of certification, something is needed after high school for majority of people. We now know that. What would be your advice on financially setting yourself up? College, as we know, is very crazy high and expensive. So how do you help? How do we do it?
So how do we do it, right? I would first start by saying have those conversations, whether it be start those savings very early on, or if we get a jump start on late savings, savings is necessary. The difference between a crisis and an inconvenience is having a savings account. So making sure that we put some emphasis on savings with our children, no matter where they what they decide to do with their future, we have to give them the foundation to have a future, right? So making sure that, you know, if it's college, getting them in front of someone that can talk to them about grants, so that way they don't have to spend a lot of their money, they can utilize free money. Whether if it's going into a trade school, actually helping them build a financial budget and looking at what they need to achieve, whether it's a short-term or a long-term financial goal, and helping them build that and get to that point. Like you said, it's not a once and done type of conversation. That's a conversation that we need to continue out when they're very young and even throughout their adulthood. So those are some of the great tips. But again, put that extra money away. You get gifts from your grandparents, you get allowances, you know, family members come over and give us money for our birthday. Save it. Don't spend it.
Yeah, so key. And it's great advice to do it and keep it going. And when you can, like you said, if there's extra funds, consider doing that. If it's for your institution, 2-year or something, we know there's something that's needed there. Any quick tips for parents on trying to empower children as well, to choose it themselves? I know the famous financial guru, I've heard Susie Orman say she's big about empowering young people to take ownership of their own future, right? I know I've heard her say, not sure if she's still like this, but a lot of these loans, she's saying they need to take accountability for themselves, right? Yes, she's a believer in that. Your thoughts on that?
I agree with those statements. We want to make sure that our children are accountable. So one tip I would give, if you know your kid says, hey mom, I want to purchase this video game and it costs $60, treat that as a loan and have them work towards paying you back. Right. And then once they do complete paying you back, gift that to them and put that money back into their savings account. That's one great thing that I utilize with my kids. Making sure that you make learning about financial literacy interactive and fun. There's tons of websites out there like steps.com, financial literacy for all, Rooster Money, that you can be interactive with your kids and have those fun conversations, and they can learn how to save and understand the language of money. Operation Hope does offer a program with a child savings account that's powered by the city of Atlanta. So if you go to operationhope.org, you can learn about that program and see how we can help you achieve that savings goal for your child. But again, always looking and encouraging your child to learn and have fun with money management, and just encourage them to continue learning and growing.
I love it. I love it. I love it. The future is bright. And Frederick Douglass, you and I talked about this. I'm paraphrasing the great civil rights abolitionist, but or advocate and abolitionist. He did say that it's easier, if you will, to educate and help our young people focus on them versus some of the older ones. So we want everybody, I'm sure I know your organization, you personally and professionally, that everyone needs to be helped. But it's such a conversation, an important conversation to have when we talking about targeting our youth. We cannot leave them out of that conversation if we're going to help change the future and make that positive impact. Such a joy to have you on. Before you officially leave us, I know, of course, Operation Hope helps with so many different amazing events and initiatives that's out there. Recently, you all participated with an amazing Boys and Girls Club event that took place that had a very special guest. I know Shaquille O'Neal name was associated with the event, and also that Boys and Girls Club in Henry County, Georgia. So tell us, how exciting was that to really speak to an audience of teenagers on the go?
Yeah. Typically, I don't really talk to teenagers, but it was actually a fun endeavor for me to, do some research and find some relatable content so that they understood what I was talking about. And it was just such a joy to bring that information and just kind of see them on the edge of their seats and not really, I wasn't a bore, thank goodness, that they were very engaged. It's something that I would love to participate in again. And I'm just so grateful and thankful to be a part of it.
Wow, such a great organization, Boys and Girls Club of America. I know I've been to them when I was a kid, and just a really cool outlet for kids to be a part of. And I know that's a brand new center that opened up, so I'm sure they were excited for all the programs. And I'm sure that organization, like many, of course, will continue to have different events throughout the year. LaWanna Ross Cows, what a great conversation tonight on Let's Talk America Radio's edition of Real Talk. We put the spotlight on a real conversation talking about finances, financial literacy and awareness for our youth. Thank you so much for joining us. Before you get out of here, I, of course, know how amazing Operation Hope is and what you all do for the community, but give us a quick snippet of the organization and how we can find out more information or reach out to you or a team member.
Absolutely, Shana. Thank you so much for asking. So Operation Hope is a national nonprofit organization that is for purpose in providing financial inclusion for all. How we help our clients achieve that goal is through finding financial dignity through financial education and literacy. How you can contact a coach is through our mobile app. We have one now with called Hope in Hand. You can find it on any your Google Play Store or your Apple Store. And then also you can visit operationhope.org to find a coach locally in your area. Again, we are a not national organization, so we have coaches in all across the country. So thank you so much for having me. I do quickly want to thank our partners, especially mine, Synchrony Bank, for making Operation Hope possible to spread a little hope to those out there that need it. So you can reach me if you want to connect with me at lawanna.ross@operationhope.org. And we hope to see you soon. Thank you, Shana.
I love it. I love it. Thank you so much for this great conversation, putting in your expertise on it as well. And I feel hopeful. I do, that our future is certainly bright. And we, even as adults, if you're 35 or 45 or 55, you can make a change yourself. She did mention the B word, budget. It's never too late. And please, as LaWanna so eloquently pointed out, have those conversations with your youth. If it's your grandkid, your niece, your nephew, your godkid, your son or daughter, you've got to have those conversations. Don't think they're 18, it's too late. LaWanna, right? There's never too late. You can play catch up.
Never too late.
Yeah. And I'm going to say this as a mom, you don't have to feel overwhelmed to do it all at once, but keep that conversation going. If you're out to lunch, bring it up there. But we've got to have the conversation to make the positive change, which is possible and plausible, and it's going to happen. Thank you, LaWanna. Thanks, ladies and gentlemen, boys and girls, for staying tuned in to Let's Talk America Radio's edition of Real Talk. We'll continue to bring you the best and the brightest experts and advocates out there with the topics you want to know more about. Money matters. So tonight's edition of Real Talk certainly matters. Okay. Stay tuned in for additional information. Visit ltaradio.com. That's ltaradio.com, or connect with us on your favorite social media outlet, famous Facebook, Twitter, or Instagram. And you can simply look for LTA Radio or hashtag LTA Radio. Let us know your feedback on tonight's edition. I'm going to give it 5 stars out of 5. The one and only LaWanna Ross Cowles with Operation Hope. Thanks for joining us, and everyone stay tuned in. Thanks, LaWanna.
Thank you.